think that I can improve on nature. I like to think I can add a little bit to it. I don't know that it's what I do to a tree makes it any more attractive than if it was a tree still alive, but most of the wood, I think everything I have ever carved on tree, I mean every tree that I've ever carved has already been dead or dying, so it kind of prolongs it a little bit maybe. And instead of just cutting it down, it'll be art for another couple years or something, instead of heading out to the landfill. It's just like being a, paleontologist. It's not digging fossils. It's in there. You just got to take away everything that's not what you want. A lot of it depends on the size of the piece. Of course, you have to have enough stock to remove. It's carving, and this sort of, I call it sculpting, but I don't know that it really is. It's more like a glorified whittling. And people that work in stone will tell you the same thing, that it's a subtractive process. Whatever you have on that piece of stock, you have. You're not going to add anything to it. You can't, you kind of have to. The way I look at it, if you ever watched like Nova, one of the nature shows where there's an archaeologist or like a paleontologist or somebody, and you see like a fossil or an artifact that's buried in the ground, and they'll dig it out. That's the way I can look at that tree and say, well, it's in there. I just, you just, like my dad said, you just take away everything that doesn't look like what you're making. And it's just that easy, and it's just that difficult. I have a picture of it in my head. I can look at whatever I'm doing and I see that there already. And it's just, sometimes I'll make a few lines, sometimes I'll sketch it out as well as I can, just because, I know it's like it's a one-shot deal. Like I said, you got to, once you take it off, you can't put it back on. I use a saw just like you use a knife. It's fast. Sometimes it's too fast. You really got to pay attention to what you're doing, because when I was little, when I started whittling, my dad told me, now listen, he said, I'll tell you one thing I know about that. He said, it's way easier to take that wood off than it is to put it back on. So, and with the saw, it comes off real fast. In my head, I see a big hand pointing up with a paintbrush, because of the proximity to the Founding Museum and sort of a tribute to his being a painter and being a wonderful painter. That it's sort of like it'll be like a monument to a painter. And what better than a hand holding a paintbrush? That's what painters do. I did a lot of whittling, like little stuff whittling when I was little. And it just kind of grew as I grew, I guess. I wanted to make some bigger pieces, so you need, of course, bigger stock. You need bigger materials to make bigger pieces with. And that's where the chainsaw comes in, because you can take off a lot of wood fast with a chainsaw. But the bad thing is you can take off a lot of wood fast with a chainsaw. So it was a big learning curve, going from like a little whittling knife and a hammer and chisel to a saw. But it's just like a big, noisy pocket knife. But you can't get a lot of detail just because the size of the chain and the size of the bar. The chain cuts about probably 3/8 maybe, a cut 3/8 of an inch wide. So if you want a finer line, you really can't do it with a saw. So sometimes I'll use a hammer and chisel. Sometimes I use a hatchet or an axe every once in a while. And a lot of times I'll use a hatchet to cut the bigger pieces off. So you can't get inside a lot of things with that saw. There's some carvings I've done where I've added metal because it was easier, because the structure of the log, of course, it has grain, and if it once it starts drying, it'll split, and you can't get away with a lot of thin elements on your piece. So I'll add metal to it. Plus, I like the way it looks. I like the way the metal looks with the wood. Just the natural, rusty-looking patina on the metal, I think looks real nice with the natural wood. I just like the way it looks, especially rusty metal, or the way copper and brass turn green when they're sitting out, the patina they get on them. I just think that looks real nice with natural wood. The finish on natural wood, I think it just goes well with it's sort of like another natural element. Rarely will I paint anything, mostly because, I don't like the way it looks, but some because I just, when I'm done with it, I'm done with it. by nature, a tree's going to grow and die and rot and return to the earth. So maybe, you know, I'll give it it looks a little bit, when I'm done with it, hopefully it looks a little better than if it was dying and rotting and falling down, you know, or I think it does. I feel it's just nature. And like I said, I'll give it another couple years of life, or, you know, and then when it goes, it's just part of it. It just goes. I don't have any delusions of any of my work being in a, you know, lasting 200 or 300 years, but, you know, it looks good for a couple years. It's just part of it. I like doing it. Having done it is to me not as rewarding as doing it.